this world in which the protagonist's memories are sort of swimming in and out of view, almost invading in some places. There's beauty in it, but there's also, the memories are quick and fluid, and they're also jarring and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it seems that virtual reality was made for that kind of experiential moment.
I mean, I suppose the fundamental issue, because theoretically you could, couldn't you? You could pretty much do whatever could be done using conventional film in VR if you were prepared to accept the resolution would be lower and you were prepared to accept your audience would just look in one direction all the time and just sit there. So, in that sense, there is, you could absolutely argue that there's nothing that VR can't do. But of course, the whole point of putting on a VR headset surely is that you take some kind of ownership of your choices about where you're looking and how you're kind of potentially moving around a space, or though often you are just sitting. And as soon as that happens, then of course, as the storyteller, you have to relinquish control up to a point, because we've developed a sort of 2D frame for film that is all about controlling the viewer's experience. And that's a very difficult thing, I think, to let go of, particularly if you're trying to tell a very specific linear story, because in a sense you feel that it's your job to highlight the points of that arc, and therefore why would you give somebody control to look in the opposite direction at the point that you really need them to be looking in one direction or another. So I mean there were two things that I was interested in specifically, apart from this more broad thing of trying to look at the kind of aesthetic. And I suppose the two things that I was looking at or interested in specifically was, to what extent can you kind of corral your subject's gaze and attention, and does that feel coercive, or does it just feel, if you do it well, does it feel like they just accidentally happen to be looking at the right point at the right time, and isn't that wonderful? And I suppose the other thing was just that if that wasn't possible, if I felt that that really was not going to be something that VR was capable of doing in any way as well as linear media like film, is there something about the poetry of that space that you can really amplify? Because, it may not be the best linear story form, but in terms of maybe just putting you into an environment that makes you feel something, it might be a really interesting experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you learn about? So that fascinates me around the gaze of the viewer in a virtual reality experience, and I suspect I've been I've been guided in various experiences in VR that I've been in with some sort of unknown kind of like tricks and tips for for attracting attention. So things I'm guessing here, things like use of sound as a kind of an orientation device to say something's happening over here right now and all that kind of stuff. But were there any things that you found through the experimentation that were particularly kind of useful and that that have gone into the sort of the Kit Monkman toolkit for VR experiences?
Well, I mean, funnily enough, I think the overriding feeling was I quite soon in the process, felt that I felt kind of uncomfortable and slightly unhappy with the attempts to direct attention. That actually it was sort of working against what I felt the medium could do best. And so I kind of came down fairly heavily on the side of, certainly in its current form, VR being a much more potent, poetic form than it is a kind of linear storytelling form. And so for this short form piece, the only thing I think that we really felt was the kind of linear backbone to it was a voiceover, and that everything else I felt it was stronger and more potent to allow the audience completely free reign to just let their eyes wander. And it's a fully 360 kind of immersive space that we've created. And so we started to play with that a lot and ended up with a kind of, I think, a visual treatment that we're going to use in the feature film that absolutely wouldn't have happened had we not done those experiments in VR.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant because I think a lot of the time they're considered to be sort of separate endeavors. Sometimes a VR piece might be a sort of almost like a brand activation for a feature or a series. But I really like it the way you've described it there as sort of as formative, informative for a piece of let's say traditional media, a traditional feature. That's really fascinating, actually.